something just rips me to the ground, like it had a hold of my backpack. Story time, but first, let's make some coffee. Right in the old ass. It's the fork from the other day. Still smells like bacon. Alright, it's quickly getting dark on me. I wanted to run down here and tell y'all a little tale about the past that happened. This was actually, I think, season before last. So we're up there at the hunting farm. I ain't gonna lie to you, walking out in the dark can get a little bit creepy. And this is either the same trip that Steven seen the cougar, or it's like the weekend after or a couple weekends after. So we're all a little on edge, and we kind of know that there's a cougar out there. And Lane is up there with us. I go to the spot that I've never been to, and I'm walking into it, and I get right about where I want to be, where I think I'm going to see some deer. And two does blast up and get out of there, hauling booty. They run off, and I'm like, daggone it, man, this is probably like a really good spot right here, because we got deer and trails and all that sort of thing. I decided to push a little bit farther to where the deer went, thinking they might walk back through, who knows. And I don't know about you, but sometimes you get to these spots out in the woods, and as soon as you hit them, like the hair kind of stands up on the back of your neck, and you're looking around in there, and you're like, ugh, this don't look good. That's what happens to me. I get to one of these spots, and I'm like, man, I don't really know about this spot. Kind of seems a little bit ominous. Well, that's the way this spot was. It was already close to dark, and I took longer than I wanted to get in there. So I decide the best thing for me to do is to just pick out a tree and climb up that rascal, whether I want to or not. So that's what I do. I pick out this gnarly tree and I start climbing up it. I get up to hunting height where I want to be, and it looks like a good cup of coffee right there. It smells good too. So I get up to where I want to be, and I'm looking out through the woods, hunting. And Lane was hunting not too far away from me. And to access the spot I was in, you had to walk through the field, the big field up there at the farm, and drop down into the woods. That's where I was. Lane was out past me in that field. And I set all my stuff up in a tree when I go. So a little bit of time passes, and it starts getting dark. And I usually stay in the tree until it gets pitch black dark. I don't come down until you have to use a flashlight to get down the tree. It's so dark. I do that, turn my light on, and start packing my gear up and getting down. And my saddle that I use has a lineman's belt that goes from one hip, put it around the tree, hook it to the other hip. Well, whenever I get down to the bottom, I unclip that and just stuff it down in this little bag on my side. So one end is like permanently connected to my saddle. The other end reaches around and clips to my other side of the saddle. So like I said, when I get done, I take it off and I jam it down in that sack. I get to the bottom of the tree and I start setting up, packing all my stuff onto my backpack, unclip from the tree, and I'm sticking my sticks together, loading them up. And the way I came in was pretty far through the woods and like thicket. And I knew that the trail was just like 100 yards straight shot up through the woods. And I was thinking that if I can just bulldoze straight through this crap up to the road, I can hit the road and walk through the field back out of here. So that's what I decided to do. It's pitch black dark. I mean, we're talking 10, 15 minutes past dark. I take off walking. I've got my backpack on, got my sticks, my bow, everything. And I'm walking. And like I said, this is an ominous area. There's a lot of cedar trees and crap, and it just looks like, I don't know, looks like something out of a scary movie or something. So I'm walking up through there, and I hear something behind me, something moving, and I stop. I don't hear anything. So I take off again. I'm trudging up through there, busting through sticks, branches, and just clawing my way through. And I start to get a little aggravated because those sticks are like jabbing me in the face and I'm just busting them out. And truth be told, I should have went the way I came in, but I was trying to get to the road a little quicker because we were actually heading home from that trip. And what happens next is hilarious. So I'm clawing through there and I still hear something behind me. I'm busting and bashing, and then all of a sudden I just get completely pulled from my back and just go flat down to the ground. Something just rips me to the ground, like it had a hold of my backpack or my back, you know. And I just get slammed onto my face with my bow and sticks. And I'm in the thicket, and I laid there for a second to try to figure out what it was. I was like, I'm gonna sit here. In my mind, subconsciously, really quick, I was thinking, let's see what's moving. And I'm sitting there and nothing's moving. So it's dead quiet. I get yanked to the ground 100 miles an hour and land on my face in like a briar thicket. And then it's just dead quiet. And I'm sitting there like, what the heck just pulled me to the ground? And still don't hear anything. So I'm like, guess I'll just stand back up. So I start to stand up and I'm like, I look back behind me. There's nothing behind me. I look over my left shoulder, the side that my lineman belt is permanently hooked to, and I forgot to stuff it down in the stuff sack trying to get out of there. What had happened, I stepped over a cedar log that had died a long time ago, and the side with the carabiner is about 8 foot back behind me, dragging through the woods and making sounds. That's what was making the sounds. And what had happened is when I went over that log, that carabiner hooked on an old busted limb that was just about that long, and I was going through that thicket so fast that it just like stuffed me to the ground face first into the twigs and branches and crap. That's not even the best part of this story. It gets even more funny. After I get slammed to the ground and back up, I collect my thoughts, set my crap down while I'm standing in the thicket, take that rope and put it down into my stuff sack on my hip, and I take off again. And I'm like right next to the road at this point. I'd busted through that crap for so long. So I finish my way up to the trail. I emerge from the pure thicket out onto the path, and I'm standing on it, and I'm just like, oh gosh. So now I'm in the field, and I turn and then turn again, and I'm heading back towards where I'd told Lane I would meet him at. And I'm walking through the field, and way up ahead of me, like 200 yards, I see Lane. He's standing up there close to the gate that's always open that you access the field through. And I can see his headlamp on, and he's got like a cheap headlamp that's not very bright. But I can make out enough of him that I can tell he's got his bow in his hand and stuff, and I can see his headlamp like looking around. And like I said, everybody's on edge from the cougar. We're all kind of expecting that cougar to jump out at any minute and attack us from behind and grab the back of our necks. So what happens next is he's up there standing at that gate just like looking around, and I'm about 100 yards behind him, and I'm trudging through the field, you know, trying to catch up. That way we can get back to the truck, load everything up, and go home. Finally, he starts hearing my boots coming, and I can see him like kind of stop all abruptly, you know, and scared. He like jerks his head like this, and he starts looking back behind him over at me, and he sees me out in the field heading his way with my headlamp like pointed right at his face, you know, because it's just the way I was walking. When he turns towards me, I notice that the cat has his bow in his hand, and he's got an arrow. He's got an arrow in the bow, and he's like pointing it back my way, and he's like, hey! He's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and I'm walking towards him. He goes, hey, is that you? Is that you? Screaming at me, wanting to know if it was me. And I was like, yeah, it's me. I finished walking up to him. I get up to him, and he thought it was the cougar that we named Geraldine trying to come at him. And I said, dude, what'd you think? The cougar had a headlamp on his head coming up here to get you? Oh, man. Thanks for watching. Man, coffee just tastes better in the woods.